topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Inarticulate speech, inarticulate speech of the heart. Inarticulate speech, inarticulate speech of the heart. Inarticulate speech, inarticulate speech of the heart.
Hello and welcome to It's Your Voice, the show that hosts enriching conversations in diversity. My name is Bahia, and because my voice is very hoarse today, I still have the honor to introducing a really vibrant, talented guest. And then thanks to my wonderful sound engineer, Rebel, she can help take over the conversation, and I'll just be here listening and watching with the listeners and viewers, and they're sparing my voice, which I'm grateful for. But before I go silent until the very end, let me introduce Toni Rizzo. Toni, thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure. Toni is an artist and the co-founder of the new Art and Music Lounge in Davis, California. It's called The Secret Spot, which is a fun name. I got to see it this weekend. It's very bright and vibrant like you. It's full of colors and really unique. I especially love the room designated for rookie artists. And I just want to ask you two questions before I get quiet and just let you speak from your heart. I'm curious about, I love that when we were talking earlier, you mentioned you consider yourself a Gen Z elder. I think that's interesting. A lot of people would like to hear about what does that mean to you? And like when you knew you were an artist, like when you knew you just couldn't not create, you just have to create. We have some beautiful photos of some of your art that Rebel's going to show. And so now I'll just pass it on. Where you want to start, Toni?
Oh, awesome. Well, yeah, the Gen Z elder thing, for starters, is I thought I was a baby millennial my whole life until recently. I learned I was Gen Z, but I don't really feel like I connect as much with how Gen Z is kind of in the world, but I have to always remind myself that I'm the elder. I paved the way for them, so... It's something that I joke about often with my friends. Like, I'm the Gen Z elder. Yeah. And as far as when I knew that I wanted to be an artist, I think I always knew deep down because I started really young. Even my preschool teacher, I ran into her recently and she was like, you used all of our art supplies. Like, you never left any. But I was just training. But yeah, throughout my childhood, I was so into art. And then once it came time for high school and considering college and career and everything, everyone told me that I was going to be an artist. And in a true stubborn artist way, I said, absolutely not. I'm never going to be an artist. And here I am. I pretty much immediately dropped out of college and came back home and first became a yoga instructor, but then within a year I started my own art business, and I've been doing that for I guess 7 or 8 years now.
You remember leaving college, but do you remember the exact point that made you decide this is not the track I'm supposed to be on?
Yeah, I was about 2.5 months into school. I was studying harder than all of my friends, but somehow failing all my classes and kept having to drop classes too. So I went from 4 to 3 to 2. And I found out after I dropped out, I got diagnosed with ADHD. So I definitely was carrying a certain mental load that I didn't realize that I was, that my peers weren't necessarily carrying. So that was a huge part of it. But yeah, I just remember feeling like such a failure. And I called my parents crying, and my dad, the next day, he flew up with 2 empty suitcases, and we packed up all my stuff, and within a few hours we were gone. And it was a really hard time kind of grappling with that, and especially not being in college when all my friends were coming back to my hometown where, as you know, the pressure of school in this town is really, really high. So to be running into all their parents and them being like, oh, what are you doing? Where are you at? Why are you here? Was difficult, but ultimately it was the best thing ever.
Awesome. So were your parents accepting of your choice?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I have amazing parents. And even throughout my school years, growing up, everybody else's parents were like, you have to have perfect grades, and the pressure was really intense. I remember in 7th grade, they started telling us about college, but my parents were always like, are you trying your best? And I'd always be honest and say yes. And they were like, okay, well then I guess there's not a whole lot we can do. You just try your best. That's what life is.
Exactly. So you came home after this. What got you that spark? You said you did yoga first. What got you on the track that you're on now?
Yeah, so I started with yoga because I just kind of went back to the basics. I was like, what brings me joy? All throughout high school, I had a really intense yoga practice that I cherished so much. So I went back to that studio and got my teaching license. And so I taught yoga for a while. And then I had a really meaningful trip down to Mexico. I went to Todos Santos on Baja. And it was all about learning about screen printing and mosaics and airbrushing and all sorts of fun art stuff. It was this long workshop that we did, and I did it with my mom, and it was really lovely, and I got to meet a lot of full-time artists. And up until that point, I really, first of all, was stubborn and didn't like being told what to do by everybody else. And second of all, I never really thought that that could be me, because the art world is notorious for being kind of hard to get into and to actually make ends meet and all that. So, but seeing all of those artists really kind of lit a fire under my butt. And between that, and I also had a mural painting gig in town for the Statement of Love mural that I did in 2016. And or I guess it was 2017. And I was like, okay, maybe I'll treat this like an actual job. And so I did with the mural, even though before I had thought that it was just a fun thing to do. It's like, this will be my job. And so I just stuck with it. I was like, this is going to be a full thing. I'm going to write down everything as if this is my job, even though I was doing it pretty much as a donation. And I got to learn a lot. I really tapped into my resources in town, and I slowly, over the years, learned more and more. I wasn't full-time doing this until, I think, 3 years ago. That's when I made the leap.
How hard was it to make that leap?
In some ways kind of hard, but in other ways it felt just like the most authentic thing that I could do. Especially, we were kind of coming out of the pandemic at that point. This was, I guess it was 2 years ago then, 2.5 years ago. And I was doing childcare and teaching yoga still. And I decided to just take that leap of faith. I was making enough that I knew I'd be okay. And my partner was also making enough where I knew I'd be okay. And Yeah, sometimes you just got to take the risk, though, even if you aren't fully certain if you're going to land on your feet or not.
That's good advice for everybody. So, the title of the show is The Power of Art. Give us a little bit of inspiration of why do you feel that there's power inside of art?
Um, I think that really speaks to what I was just saying about taking a leap of faith. For me, art is so much more than just something enjoyable to look at. Uh, it really is a glimpse into that person when you get to see their artwork. And not only uh, is art that is beautiful important, it's nice to look at something pretty, but also art holds the entire spectrum of emotions, and we can feel just about anything through art. We can express anything we need to express. Art can really be therapy. Art can help meet sensory needs. Art can help process information. um, there's just so much that art can hold for us. And for me, making that leap of faith was so important because uh, if I hadn't, wouldn't have been authentic to who I am. Because this art is something that I need to be who I am. And if I can't be doing that every day in some little form or another, then I'm not living the life that's meant for me.
Very well spoken, very well spoken. Um, so tell us a little bit about the importance of non-conventional art.
Yeah, so I that is kind of about the whole like spectrum of emotions and everything. And um I think oftentimes when people think of art, they think of a nice landscape or a nice portrait or, something really wholesome and sweet and simple. And that artwork is wonderful too. However, there's some weird, awesome artists out there that are doing really strange stuff that might make you feel uncomfortable. Um, but I think that discomfort is so important for all of us to feel because we're not having our truest human experience if we're not feeling all of those things. So, like, non conventional art can be gross, it can be weird, can be scary. It can use techniques that aren't necessarily the right techniques, which I kind of personally uh, am kind of happy that I didn't go to art school because sometimes you can come out the other side thinking you have to do it this way and only this way, whereas when you throw all the rules out the window, anything can happen, and that includes magic. That includes something that can move people, even if it's moving them in a weird way, even if they're like deeply disturbed, it can still be really important because that's what human experience is.
That's so true. I find that people need to put the judgment down. They need to open up open up their mind to what art is. And it's not necessarily a you have to do it this way type of thing. If you are able to express yourself and express your feelings through art, I think it helps people in many different ways. Um, how do you feel about um how art is processing the hard feelings?
I think it's amazing. For me personally, I know it shows up differently for everyone. I've actually recently had a really good conversation with a musician friend of mine, and both of us resonate in the fact that we naturally have a lot of hard feelings. We're both big feelers, very sensitive, feel stuff really intensely. And for him, the way that he processes it is by uh, singing about all the things in his head, really just vocalizing all of the intensity. Whereas I kind of do the opposite. I like to paint what I wish I was feeling or experiencing. I like to, um, what I always say with my personal work is it feels like home for me. Even if it doesn't necessarily look like home, it feels like a home to me. and it puts me at ease. Usually bright colors. If you want to show any of my work on the screen, lots of bright colors, usually animals or objects that I find really interesting or fun. So it is processing hard feelings for me, but it appears completely different, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. So let's actually start with the pictures we have today. Tell us a little bit about this piece of work.
Oh yeah, this one is His Highness, I believe is the name of it. And I just think vultures are the coolest thing ever. They're so underrated. They're very circle of life type animals. And yeah, for me this just brings me joy and calmness, and this dude looks so confident and cool, and I get to feel that vicariously through it. This one makes me laugh. This one we call airmail. My dad named it for me. And it's just, I just like to do stuff that makes me giggle. Sometimes it can be deeper, but sometimes it just makes you giggle. And that's what this piece is. And it has many meanings that people have told me. That's the other part of being an artist is you get to hear everybody else's perceptions. And I just love hearing people's stories of this because people go deep with this one.
I can see it because you have the eagle, you have the paper airplane, and you have the mail service, and you could really take this in multiple ways.
Oh,
How about
absolutely.
this one?
Oh, this is one of my most recent pieces. It's called The Wake. Again, it's vultures. These ones are Egyptian vultures. And I call it The Wake because you know how different animals have names for when they're a group together? I forget the name for when they're flying. I think it's like comrade or something. But when they're eating together, vultures are called awake, which is kind of heavy. But this piece itself is the biggest piece I've ever done that's not a mural, and it's a 4x5 foot canvas. So each of these birds is like human sized and staring at you, and it's got some heaviness to it, but also the brightness of it kind of lightens the mood a little bit as well.
And you say it's called awake when they're sitting eating together?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, you see, it makes sense because they eat off of dead bodies. So, it's almost like being at a wake for the dead.
Totally. Yeah. And then I also think a lot about sky burials too, and how those are very difficult to, death is a difficult subject to stomach. But I think there are ways in which we can still talk about it and have that conversation through art. And show the importance of it. And just because it's scary or dirty or something that we're not used to doesn't mean we should be shying away from it.
Absolutely. And here's another question. How do you feel that art reflects life?
Oh, see,
A little hard coming off of the wake one, but
Yeah. I mean, life and death, equally important, equally each other as well. Yeah, I mean, even just existing, our lives are death. We're just on that cycle. So yeah, I feel like that also kind of goes back to what I was saying about how the emotions that we have, the feelings that we have, our experiences, we can translate into artwork. So for me, with my artwork personally, it's about reflecting the ways in which I feel calm and good and joy and humor, as well as sometimes the hard things. Like that last piece, The Wake, was a really difficult one for me to do, especially because I do such lighthearted work. But that one was a really intense piece to make and a really important piece to make. And I think not to go too deep or too dark with this, but I think especially post-pandemic, a lot of us have had death on the mind and have had a lot of darker thoughts. And yeah, so for me personally, it's just a little glimpse into where my mind can often be found.
Absolutely. I can also lighten it by saying, not necessarily thinking about death, but the change in the way life is now going, opposed to the way it was before this.
Hmm.
And we
Yeah.
have this little guy here. Whoa, he's casting a big shadow.
Yeah. So this is actually the only painting of mine that I have kept. I refuse to sell this one. I will never sell this one. I call it a friendly shadow. And as with most of my pieces and its backgrounds versus its subject matter, I like to say it's a collaboration between me and little kid me. So like the background, I just like put a bunch of colors on the canvas and swirled them around. I felt like I was icing a cake. It was so fun. And then the shadow is between the background and the shadow. That's totally little kid me. I mean, that's like a little kid bird for sure. And then to get to collaborate with that and do my kind of precision, and I'm very much a perfectionist with all of my detail work. It's fun to see them kind of juxtaposed next to each other, as well as let both sides of myself play, because it is important to let go sometimes and to like really play with that inner child, let that come out, but also stay true to yourself and who you are. And I don't think it's a bad thing to be a perfectionist as long as you don't let it rule everything.
Absolutely. How about this guy here?
Oh, yes. This one also has a little buddy, a mouse that goes next to it, and I refused to sell them apart. I made sure that they were sold as a pair because they're best friends. I mean, come on, those two cuties are besties. And these ones are fun experiments too. I like to get these little like wooden half spheres and glue them on to the wood panel. So they're almost like little wooden pom-poms, which just there's something about it. It just really does something for me.
And then we
Oh
have
yeah.
this one here.
These are some minis that were, and some of the other pieces too, were at my Pence show last year. I was at the Pence Gallery here in Davis. And these ones are all fairly small too. And yeah, I just really was playing around with color, and even talking with the Pence ahead of time. I had a lot more, more like the friendly shadow painting from earlier. My backgrounds were really chaotic, and I loved that. But the Pence was like, what if you like reeled that in a little bit more, refined it more? And this is the style that I ended up coming up with for that. And I instantly fell in love. I actually do this with most of my paintings now. I just think it's fun to play with those kind of abstract shapes, bold colors, so that the subject really can shine.
Very
This is
nice.
actually one of my most recent paintings that I did this year, because I haven't gotten to do much painting this year, but I did this one for a show that I just had at Sedgwick here in town. And this one I'm having a hard time parting with too. I'm upping a little artist secret for you all. I'm upping the price to a price that I'm willing to let go of this for. That's sometimes you got to do that.
Absolutely. I can totally understand. It's very hard to part with these.
Absolutely. Normally it's pretty easy, but every once in a while I can't do it. This one I made for Delta of Venus here in town. I had a show there last year, and so I combined the Venus de Milo with the birth of Venus. And it was a ton of fun. It was so many hours though. All those little folds on the statue. I don't know how they ever made those statues. I'm not patient enough for that. Just painting it alone was too much. Ooh, yes. I love to paint boots. I'm pretty much always wearing boots, including now. I love some little boots.
So tell us, how do you feel about the arts and sensory needs?
Yeah, so this is one that I really love to talk about, especially regarding my inner child and little kid me. Like doing a lot of the chaotic backgrounds. They might not look as beautiful or refined, but sometimes it isn't about that. Sometimes it's about the process and just creating and getting paint on your hands and smearing it everywhere. And I think there's a lot to be said around that. And especially as a neurodivergent artist, and I know many neurodivergent people as well, meeting your sensory needs is especially important. And there's so much of that in the art world, whether it's rubbing paint around or playing with clay or smearing some charcoal. There's so much of that to be had, because art is all done with your hands for the most part, unless you want to get your feet out and stomp on some clay, which I've seen somebody do before too. I think
That sounds interesting.
Oh yeah, totally. Sometimes you just got to get all the air bubbles out, and your hands are not enough. So I've actually stomped on clay myself. But yeah, it feels really good. It's such a release when you're having difficult feelings. I think it can really help you process. We even have a new studio here in town specifically for kids called Bubblegum Art Studio, and they do process art where it's not at all about the outcome. It's just 100% about the process of it. And I think a huge part of that is sensory needs, and kids are another huge candidate for needing their sensory needs to be met and to just get that energy out of their bodies and calm down and tune in.
That sounds amazing. So here's a big, heavy question. How do you feel art can help the world?
Oh yeah. I just think it can help the world in so many ways. I think really everything we just said about processing feelings, sorting through your thoughts, expressing stuff so other people can understand you more. I think it's a huge way that we can communicate within each other without even necessarily having to say words. And if we all did a little bit more of that, I think that the world would be a better place. I think if everybody had a way in which they could express themselves and really show their most authentic self, the world would be a more loving place, a more open place. I think not only in hearing people's expression of joy, but also we could understand what others have gone through and empathize more and yeah, just really connect. I think art to me equals connection.
Yeah, I think it's a way for maybe if people can get more understanding of art, maybe they can get a little bit more understanding of themselves because
Absolutely.
it's so and others, not only do you have to understand yourself, but you have to kind of be a little bit more understanding of others and learn to see from a different perspective.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with that.
So, what is your feelings about art being a science?
Oh, art being a science. Okay,
I say this because I'm trying to push schools to keep art in their programs. So many schools are, laying it by the wayside and cutting their funding. So, what is your opinion about that?
I love that you said that because first of all, yes, agreed. Art should be in every school. But second of all, a huge way in which I got into art growing up, um, and my mom is when I think I was 8 years old, we went and volunteered on campus at UC Davis because my dad works there, and his colleague runs a class called Art Science Fusion. And every year they do this course. My mom's now been volunteering since I was 8, so going on 20 years of volunteering for this. And it's a really cool collaboration to see. And you got both the art majors and the science majors in this and doing the best that they can for the other side of it. and they make really cool installations. They're all over town. They've even been flown to Washington, D.C. to have their artwork there. I think that they go hand in hand really, really well. And I do think that there is a science to art. I think there's a lot of psychology behind art. I think that a lot of art subjects are based in science. Like a lot of the subjects of art science fusion are usually, they do insects, plants, they somehow are able to do disease. They're able to do all sorts of different things. And they're the perfect pairing.
Well, it sounds lovely, and I hope everyone listening will take advantage of donating some if you could find the right place to donate so we can keep art going on.
Absolutely.
So let's talk a little bit about being an artist and a creative person. How do you feel it helps you connect with others?
Yeah, I think it really helps to connect with others. The thing that I have found though over the years is that I connect very differently than others sometimes. I think a lot of us artists are a little unusual, a little socially awkward, but ultimately we're able to see the space in between, all of the little things, all of the beauty, the intricacies, and I think that that's a huge way to connect with others. Yeah, I think it's really a cool way to get to see more about other people too when I create with them. And even right now, we just opened up an art and music lounge here in Davis, and I'm getting to meet a lot of different people. And you just wouldn't expect the stuff that you hear from people when it's in the context of art. And it's awesome. I think being in artistic spaces totally makes people open up more. I think that it's just, it's got this thing to it. Art just is able to open people up, crack them open, even if they're like the toughest people that don't like to share. I've heard a lot of cool things from very unassuming people.
Well, it sounds like it brings people together. Now, how do you feel do you feel that people need to artists when they're creating something, do you feel that they need to box up and be alone on doing something, or do you feel that others can do it differently?
Yeah, I think as with any type of any job, there's extroverted and introverted people. I personally am an introvert. Uh, I'm okay at acting extroverted for a certain amount of time, but my social battery is very tiny. So I personally prefer to work alone. That's my favorite way to work. But I also alternatively love sharing space and not talking. I think that is a really powerful feeling, to be in a room full of artists that are super zoned in, but you still get that energetic feeling of like, oh, we're in this together. I do know people though that absolutely prefer to be in shared workspaces, talking, hanging out the whole time. For me personally, that's like a very rare thing. I don't really like to chat too much when I'm working.
Understandable. How long does it take to create a piece? Like, do you have to put time into thinking about where it's going to go, or does it just flow freely?
Yeah, some are really easy. The concept comes out of thin air. I get to it, and within a couple hours, it's done. Sometimes I have to let the thought marinate for a long time, or a huge way that I actually do my process that has helped me with time and energy is I like to play in Photoshop ahead of time. So I kind of get an idea of where I want my subject to be. And I usually do the background first before, and then I can kind of Photoshop over that background and see what I like. And sometimes that takes me hours and hours, and I'll have to keep coming back to it day after day and try a new thing and try a new thing, and months go by and finally it works. And my pieces in general take anywhere from 1 hour to 40 plus hours, depending.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. So tell me, do you find your creativity or, like, do you have a little weirdo self?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I am a true weirdo. I'm even in a band. I don't know if this is for anybody here to look up or not, but it's called Exotic Cringe Club, and we make cringy music on purpose. Like, our whole goal is to make everyone uncomfortable and be like, why are you saying the stuff that we're not supposed to say? And it's so fun. I call it cringe therapy. But yeah, I've definitely got a weirdo side.
Cringe therapy. This is a different angle on getting people to open up. I like this.
Exactly.
I like this. So tell me, why do we human beings create things?
Oh, that's a good question. I actually think about this a lot in the context of like uh the the first humans, basically, and how, you had to have your needs met. You had to go out, get food, find water, procreate, all that. But like, what was the first stuff that we did that was just for pure enjoyment? Art was one of the first things. Music, those were some of the first things that people did for enjoyment. Like, how cool is it that somebody had to climb all the way up into a little cave, remembering what that one bird looked like, and they have this one color that's close enough from this one berry, and they rub it on the wall, and oh, okay, that's all right. Like, how cool is that? That we can all resonate with that. It's so human to want to do something that's enjoyable.
That sounds amazing. Excuse me. So have you ever had to grapple with the perception of others?
Yeah, this is something that I often talk about too, where specifically visual artists, we like to do our visual art so that we don't have to talk about it. But the community usually wants to hear what we have to say in some way or form. I try to say as little as humanly possible about my pieces because I actually really love the perception of others. I think whatever my intention is for a painting, the painting feels like mine until it's done. And then it's up to others to decide what it is and decide what it means to them. And so I find it really interesting to hear what people think and say about my pieces and what it means to them, because often it's not what it means to me. It's completely different. And I love that. I think that's so cool. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what I meant to do with it because it moved somebody. However it did, it moved them. And that's what's important to me. It resonated. So I actually really enjoy that aspect. I don't love it as much when I do commission work because I feel like a lot less freedom. I feel like, oh no, I have to be perfect, and what if they hate it? So I'm a little more scared of the perception of others then. But when it's just like pure original work, I think it's so fun to hear what people think.
Have you ever heard someone's opinion on, or perception of what they see in your art? Have you ever argued with someone and like, no, that's not it?
No, I'm just so curious. And even if they're totally wrong when they're like trying to project and say, this is obviously what you meant, I just kind of play along because it's fun. I even have, sometimes I like to dabble with music too. I just do little ukulele songs that I write. There's one that I wrote about like being at a stop sign and letting the other car go even though you got there first. And it's 100% about that. I was just singing it in the car by myself when it happened. And I sang it at this party, and this person approaches me and they're like, oh, wow, what a deep song. Like, this must have been a really difficult breakup for you. And like, they got really into just how deep this song was. And it just made me smile. I just cringed so hard because I was like, sometimes it really is simple, but I love that you went there with it, and let's go there. Sure.
Have you ever heard someone's reaction to one of your art pieces and followed it with something, taking it the course they took it to? Like, have you ever, say you painted this way and this was your feelings on it, but you heard someone else's feelings. Have you ever gone back and made an adjacent piece to it because of what they said?
No, but now I will. I like that thought. That's cool. Yeah. Oh, and I guess in a sort of way, I like to get fueled by hate comments sometimes. That's fun. Like I drive around town in a painted van. I muraled it just because I knew I was going to drive it into the ground anyway, so might as well have fun. And every once in a while, I'll be walking up to my car and they don't know it's mine, and I'll hear people be like, could you imagine doing that to your car? Like, how awful. And it makes me laugh so much, and I just add more stuff to my car right after.
That sounds amazing. So we have about 9 minutes left. Tell me more about the secret spot.
So the secret spot is my new baby. I have co-founded it with two wonderful humans, Harry Greer and Stephanie Peel, here in Davis. We are an art and music lounge. And basically, we founded it because we felt like there was a huge need for more art spaces in the community, and really specifically art spaces that have no bar to entry, because we have some really wonderful established places here in town. But first of all, just even talking to them, because I'm close with all of those places, the wait list is long. They're like the Pence, it's 3 years out now. I think the Arbory is 2 years out. There's all sorts of wait lists. You have to go through all these different things. Whereas we wanted a space where we cycle stuff very frequently. I think earlier you mentioned the rookie room, and that is like the room where we usually have 10 plus artists in there, and it'll cycle through every few weeks. And it doesn't matter your age, it doesn't matter your skill level, it doesn't matter how long you've been making art, you are in that room. We have no restrictions except for nothing offensive. So if we're like, that's kind of offensive, we're not going to put that up. But other than that, if you put yourself on the list, which we have signups at Secret Spot, you will be called at some point, unless it's hard to read. That's another thing. Sometimes people aren't very good at writing their stuff, so write better. But yeah, anybody is welcome in that. And then we also have our Superstar Suite gallery space. And that is to highlight individuals that we think are really going above and beyond, doing something new, something fresh. And that is 1 or 2 artists every month. So yeah, those are our 2 gallery spaces. Besides that, we have a shop with merchandise that cycles through every month with a bunch of different local makers. We have an indoor lounge and a front patio lounge. We have games, we have art supplies. People can come just hang out, be in the space, feel inspired. Yeah, I think that's the main spiel, but I could talk about Secret Spot forever.
Absolutely. And where is it located again?
We're at 117 D Street, and we are just a week old. We still have a GoFundMe up too, because we're still a new business and launching. So if anybody has the ability to help us out, you can always donate, come into the shop, tell people you know. There are lots of ways to help Secret Spot launch.
Awesome. So there is a place for people to donate in the building itself?
Yeah, we have a GoFundMe online that you can find through our social media. But we also have QR codes in the actual space so that you can always donate anywhere you are.
Awesome. So everybody go over to the secret spot and find the QR codes and scan it with your phone and donate, donate, donate.
Yes.
All right. We have 5 minutes left. I want to I see you have a quote. What is your famous quote? Your Tony's quote?
I have a Tony's quote. What's my quote?
I think so. It says
It's
go
at the
ahead.
bottom of the text you sent me that, can you
Oh,
read it out loud, Rebel, please? Because it's really great. It'd be wonderful to hear it.
I often think about the overlap of being Oh, wow, you hit me with big words here.
Neurodivergent?
yeah.
Neurodivergent. I'm far away from the screen. Um, and being an artist, about 15 to 20% of people in the world are neurodivergent, but the number goes up to 30% in the artist community.
Yeah, I think that a lot of artists are neurodivergent. The studies have shown, and I think it makes a lot of sense. It's definitely something that I think about a lot personally, being neurodivergent and in these spaces. I think it's really cool because art does help us process things. Art does help us on so many levels, and I think just the way in which my brain works and many other neurodivergent individuals that I know, we need a lot of extra processing. We need to work through a lot of our big feelings. For me personally, I have ADHD and I'm very intensely sensitive, and being able to be in a space where I can process all of that and calm myself down and feel safe and feel home is everything. And that's why art is not a choice for me, it's a necessity. And I think that for a lot of other neurodivergent people, art is a true safe haven.
That's very well said. Thank you. Thank you so much. We have about 3 minutes left. Bahia, are you able to speak a little bit right now?
Yes. Oh gosh, Rebel, thank you so much for the questions you brought in and helping bring out Tony's brilliance. Tony, do you have any last closing thought before we wrap up the show?
I guess the only other thing I would say is, if you haven't created in a while, for anyone listening, consider doing something creative for your soul. If you're not into doing visual art, you can always do some music, you can do some dancing. There are lots of different ways to express yourself, and ultimately I think it leads to a better, happier life if you do some expressing. So I would highly urge everyone to go do some art this weekend.
My God, I agree 1000%. Sounds so healing and uplifting and rejuvenating and renewing. And your paintings are just gorgeous. I love them. And I do encourage everyone, like as Rebel said, find secret spot, whether it's online or in person in Davis. It's 117 D Street in Davis, California. And there is something there for everyone. And let me close by thanking you again, Toni Rizzo, artist, Gen Z elder, co-creator of the Secret Spot Art and Music Lounge. Thank you, Rebel, so much for being more than a sound engineer for me, for being an interviewer tonight. Thank you, all the listeners and viewers, so much for downloading and spreading this podcast. And if you want to encourage anyone to create and be creative and just express themselves with no judgment, just for the healing and happiness, please share this with anyone you know. And also thank you to our producer, Dean Piper, who's incredibly supportive. And may we all experience and engage in enriching conversations and diversity this week and always. See you next Wednesday at 8 p.m. on Talk4TV and W4CY.com. At Wednesdays, 8 p.m. Eastern Time.
Inarticulate speech, inarticulate speech of the heart. Inarticulate speech, inarticulate speech of the heart. Inarticulate speech,